Hello, thanks for tuning in. It's Joe Simhart again. It's October 28th, 2022. Today I'm going to cover a topic that's been on my mind for some years. I'm going to look at the teachings of a character who's been on the self-help circuit for quite some time, a favorite of Oprah Winfrey's. His name's Eckhart Tolle, and he was most famous for releasing in 1999 The Power of Now, based on personal experience as he emerged from melancholia in Canada. But I'm going to start this talk with an anecdote, an experience I had. I was walking my dog, an English Shepherd. It's similar to a Border Collie, but a little sturdier, also called Farm Collie, by a neighbor's house. And suddenly the pit bull was out with the neighbor. She was just taking it from the yard back to her front door. And it took off like a shot toward me and my dog. It latched onto my dog's throat. And I had to do something very quickly. I grabbed both dogs. There was a lot of squealing. And I pounded the pit bull's head a few times, hurting my hand. It's like rock solid head bone. Wouldn't let go. So I managed to wrestle both dogs down to the ground, and with my left knee, got onto the pit bull's throat. And after 10 seconds of being choked, it let go. And the owner took control of it. And I took control of my dog and went home. The owner came up about 5 minutes later and showed me its papers. It had been vaccinated against rabies and all that. And I took the papers to my vet with the dog and got her cleaned up and got antibiotics for the 4 puncture marks in her neck. Luckily, the pit bull had not been able to puncture any muscle tissue or the jugular. It was a skin wound, essentially, with 4 pinpricks. And before I went up there, the neighbor told me, "Hey, your knee is bleeding." And I looked down and it looked like pizza on my right knee, and it was blood running down my leg. I cleaned that up later. Okay, so all of this happened in one morning. Kind of ruined half my day. But I had to react rather quickly and think on the spot how to prevent further harm from happening. And I managed to resolve the situation in some way. First time I've ever been in that situation. But what does that have to do with the power of now? Well, if you read Eckhart Tolle, this power of now is something he came to a realization of his essential self, or the I am presence, as the I am cult calls it, that eternal being within, which is part of the entire universe, blah, blah, blah. You hear this from New Agers saying, we are all one. We are one with God. We are one with the universe. We are co-creators with God. And it goes on and on like that in terms of the non-dual nature of human essence. A lot of our non-dualists in modern times, like Ken Wilber is one who touts this non-dual self. Non-dualism, of course, comes from Shankara, the great Hindu philosopher, I think back in the 8th century. Read him if you want to know about non-dualism, not Ken Wilber. But, in The Power of Now, we have Eckhart Tolle open this up by saying, "You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are." So this was his realization, which lifted him from his melancholia, depression, or whatever anxiety he was suffering in Canada before he became, quote, a spiritual teacher, unquote. As I read this, "You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold," I'm reminded of Heidegger's Dasein, where he claims that Dasein, or being there, which is us, human, we are kind of like energy that creates a clearing in the forest of darkness and in the universe, and we are consciousness itself, adding some kind of presence or light to our surroundings. And I think Eckhart Tolle borrows maybe sophomorically from Heidegger, but he carries that throughout his teachings. What's interesting here is that it says in the back cover of Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle is a contemporary spiritual teacher who is not aligned with any particular religion or tradition. He writes with the timeless and uncomplicated clarity of the ancient spiritual masters and imparts a simple yet profound message. There is a way out of suffering and into peace, and so forth. So he's kind of like a modern Buddha. But as I read him, and as I read a lot of other things back when he was popular in the early 2000s and held up by Oprah Winfrey among her lineage of gurus that she discovered over time, I noticed something quite common in him. For instance, in this book, A New Earth Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, he writes on page 198, it says, J. Krishnamurti, the great Indian philosopher and spiritual teacher, spoke and traveled almost continuously all over the world for more than 50 years, attempting to convey through words which are content, that which is beyond words, beyond content. Anyway, Krishnamurti was famous in the early part of the 20th century for having been chosen by the Theosophists, Charles Leadbeater, specifically as being the next world teacher. Krishnamurti was age 13 at the time. He was groomed. He had his own cult following, mostly English women in brilliant saris surrounding him to be his servant, to nurture him and groom him to be this world teacher, kind of like the next Kalki avatar or Christ come again or whatever. It was all that mixed together. Krishnamurti famously at age 29, I believe, he denounced the whole thing. He got tired of it and fed up with all this attention, I think, and he began to say that faith is a pathless land, follow no master. And then he began to teach, and of course, the same Theosophists went to him and began to listen to him lecture from, his chair in front of the audience and give out pithy ideas of his new insight into faith as a pathless land, and you have to live in the moment, and all of that existential stuff that he sort of came up with. Eckhart Tolle, aligning himself somewhat with Zen masters and Krishnamurti, and also has some kind things to say about A Course in Miracles, tells me quite a bit about him. He's actually someone that follows the New Thought tradition that came out of the 19th century. And New Thought essentially is about the mind. And it's about changing perception in order to change reality. So if you believe, like Christian scientists do, which are part of the New Thought tradition, that there is no such thing as sickness, your body will absorb health, and therefore disease will drift away from your body. Of course, that doesn't work on a pragmatic basis in the real world, but Christian scientists hold to this. They don't even believe in death. They don't go to funerals, for instance. Now, not all New Thought sects and cults follow this kind of exacting dogma of Christian scientists. Unity Church has a variation of it. The Church of Religious Science has another variation. The Church of Science of the Mind has another variation. But they basically have the same idea that if you change your thoughts, you can change yourself and you can change the universe. A lot of what we call affirmations or positive thinking came right out of the New Thought tradition. So all of these ideas and totalist explanations or instincts about the universe and about man's essence have an evil that they try to eliminate. New Thought's evil is negative thoughts. Also, amongst some of the New Thought churches, like Church Universal and Triumphant, had a big New Thought component to it, the cult I was in. They began talking about animal magnetism that was first talked about by Anton Mesmer. New Thought people picked up this idea and called it malicious animal magnetism, which is what draws people into the evil world of illusion and sickness and death and poverty and all that bad stuff that we experience as human beings. Yeah, so Tolle falls into that category of a New Thought preacher. Self-help guru who has now surrounded himself with handlers and has lectures and workshops and all that good stuff that goes with newly awakened, enlightened gurus that come into our path. So what's the problem here? I mean, he seems like a humble enough guy. And despite his limited understanding of philosophy, his extremely limited understanding of Christianity, his understanding is similar to A Course in Miracles that was channeled by Helen Schucman, was released around 1975 after 7 years of channeling information from something she called the voice, which was in her head. You know, when I listen to Tolle and his lectures, I sense that he's channeling this unmanifested source being that's in himself, and he hesitates, he thinks, he looks like a little Yoda on stage, humble and kind of unassuming, and he comes up with these profundities that somehow move people in the audience. Of course, not everybody likes him. One of his critics that I read online, Akhilesh A.R., a non-dualist in the Hindu tradition, but I wouldn't put him in the category of Shankara's non-dualism. However, he says Eckhart Tolle is one of the leading people converting the exciting findings of non-duality into boring, syrupy, non-intellectual crap. True, he says many things that are correct and for some people no doubt useful. Yes, his overall message is probably fine, like processed cereal is fine. But overall, his blandness, his confusion of categories, his poor thinking and lazy analysis of important texts, it's also boring. Like a copy of a copy of a copy, it is tired, mixed up, and cliched. I'm practically put to sleep by the power of now, the book that after Oprah catapulted him to Deepak Chopra. I have problems with Deepak too, which I'll get into another day. Levels of stardom, sold millions of copies. And what are the problems? And he goes into them and he says, one problem is it condemns all negative emotions, which is again, New Thought. I don't agree with everything that IR says, but I do think that when I listen to Tolle, he kind of puts the ego in that framework of being the evil sense. And suddenly ego is a stand-in for the limited self, the ignorant self, the whatever that resists the divine. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I don't think the ego is all that bad. You can have a healthy ego. And I'm not sure if Eckhart Tolle has a healthy ego. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Let you think about it. Have a good day.